sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. My name is Virginia Jones, and I'm a stand-up comedian, and I have a sister, and she is a therapist.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan, but my main credit is sister to Jedi of Jests, Virginia Jones.
Oh, wow, Just Jedi. I can't believe we haven't gotten to that one already. Thank you for joining us, first of all. Great to have you.
We missed you.
Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Alice. I was just in a circle of people at a show last night. One person said, "Oh, I listened to the show." And then another two people said, "Oh, yeah, I've listened to the show." I was in a podcast pod, and I appreciate all of you. On this podcast, as returning listeners know, we take turns thinking of a topic, researching a topic, and talking it over. This week, I'm the smarty pie, and Laura's the ignoramus. Laura, what listener updates do you have?
I just wanted to let everyone know, if you're wondering where the U.S. stands in our listenership, it's number one. I'm going to give you two guesses on who's number two.
Turkey.
Is it Turkey? Yes, it is.
Wow.
UK has jumped back up to 3. Germany's at 4. France is at 5. Brazil is at 6. Canada's at 7. Spain, Thailand, and Italy.
The U.S. makes sense because we both live here. A little hurtful that Canada is that far down.
Yeah, we're pretty close to y'all, especially Virginia.
I'm one state away from Canada.
Maybe you need to be dividing your time a little bit better with the Canadians and letting them know about My Sister's a Therapist podcast.
We'd like to say, how you getting on to Canada, especially Newfoundland?
If you were wondering about our genders of listeners,
do our listeners have genders? Probably most of them.
0.7% are non-binary. Hello, non-binary listeners. Also, we have 2.7% not specified. And then the men are popping back up again. We've got 46.2% men and 50.4% women.
We do not promote male listeners. We do not seek you out, but we will begrudgingly accept you.
Begrudgingly. So our listenership by age is very interesting. We've had some shifts. Our highest listenership by age right now is 23 to 27-year-olds.
Hey, kids. Skibbity toilet.
I think you've jumped a little too far down. That's Gen Alpha. And then we have the next group, 35 to 44. Hello, millennials. Then we've got 45 to 59.
Gen X.
Gen X, 20.2%. If you're our one listener who's 0 to 17, welcome. If you're our two listeners who are 60 plus, welcome. And hello to the rest of you. Virginia, what's our topic this week?
Laura, this week, I would like to talk about self-sabotage.
Oh, this is a favorite in my office.
I think everyone has done it. Self-sabotage is getting in your own way. Self-sabotage is doing things to make sure you don't succeed, even though in your neocortex, you might think that you're doing everything you can to succeed. Some common examples: if you put something off long enough, eventually it will resolve itself. You will have missed the deadline. You will have lost the opportunity to apply for the job. Whatever it is, you don't have to worry about being successful at it if you never try. Self-destructive behaviors. This is a little more serious: substance abuse, overeating, neglecting self-care, avoidance, steering clear of opportunities or situations where success is likely, trying to avoid pressure. Perfectionism. Letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, setting unrealistic standards and feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to achieve them. You see this in type A people sometimes. They'll achieve, and then burn out, and sometimes can be in burnout for a long time. But the biggest overarching theme of self-sabotage is just repeating unhealthy patterns. Being in a position where you're like, why do I always do this? Why am I in this position again? In career, we would say procrastination, perfectionism, giving up before you try, negative self-talk. I'm not going to do that. Why would I even try to do that? A more subtle one is focusing on low priority tasks. This is something that I do a lot. And this is a big ADHD thing, obviously. I work on the thing that is most interesting to me, which is not always the highest on the list of things that need to get done. If I'm supposed to do a big presentation and I spend 2 days picking out the right pair of shoes to wear, I'm not going to be that successful at the presentation. What are some examples of self-sabotage that you recognize or resonate with you?
I had a person just this week who had a very important document that she needed to complete. She had 90% of it left to do, and she spent the whole day at work working on important but not time-sensitive tasks. I remember I had a professor in college who was, looking back, ADHD AF. She was typically 20 minutes late to class every day. She was just all over the place. But I remember she said that her house was never cleaner until she had papers to grade or a big presentation. She said you could eat off the floor during those weeks.
Yeah, I've heard writers say that when I have a deadline coming up, my house is so clean, everything is so organized because I tell myself, oh, these are the things I need to do before I sit down and do the thing.
I remember in college, this is why I would do all of my projects. I always did them in coffee shops because otherwise I was changing a cat box or I was washing sheets or I was doing some sort of domestic labor. This actually, in many ways, beat procrastination out of me. My senior year of college, I had one paper to write for this class, and I had the entire semester to write it. And it was our only grade for the entire semester. It was Czech art and architecture. It was a 25-page paper, and I started writing it about 48 hours before it was due.
Wow.
And last night I was driving by TCBY and I pointed to it and I said to my son, hey, see that TCBY? The day before my paper was due, my friend asked me if I wanted to go to TCBY, and I said yes.
You're right. That does take priority over the paper that is your only grade.
It was TCBY. And then the next thing was my roommate was watching X-Files, and I really needed to watch that instead of writing my paper. Eventually what happened, it was so bad. I was sleeping in 15-minute increments, and and I called my teacher and I said, what time is this due? Because I know that I have to turn it in to the building, but I know you're not there. He said the building closes at 5 p.m. So it needs to be turned in by 5 p.m. I turned it in at 4:59.
I think that's a part of college, realizing even when you pull an all-nighter, it might not be enough time. I remember learning nighttime is not infinite. It's just a number of hours. And guess what? My brain slows down and I am less productive at night. And that's a terrible thing to know. One of my favorite authors, Douglas Adams, had real trouble with procrastination. His quotable quote about it is, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make as they go by. He had the terrible fortune of writing a hit comic sci-fi book. Then he had some very serious deadlines, and a lot of people needed him to hit the deadlines to make money. So they would essentially kidnap him and put him in a hotel. He couldn't do anything else until he did this many pages or this much writing.
And I remember Piers Anthony, a very prolific sci-fi writer. Somebody asked him how he got so much stuff done. And he said the way that he did it is he had a little cabin behind his house, and he would leave his house at 8 a.m., go to his cabin, typey. He had a lunch. It was a whole thing. And he just worked from 9 to 5 and saw how much he could get done.
Like a regular working stiff.
Right. And I just thought, wow, I wish I had any of the abilities to do any of that. So this is the thing I'm going to say about self-sabotage. Every time somebody comes to me and says I'm self-sabotaging, what I'm generally noticing is that they have an anxiety disorder and or ADHD. They're calling it self-sabotage, but really what they're finding is that they have emotional issues and mental issues that are getting in the way of completing tasks.
It's another example of how you think your brain can just brain. When you think about how long it's going to take you to do a task, you think of yourself in a normal place or an ideal place, and you don't have perfect control over that.
Well, you don't have any control over that.
Right. Well, I'm being optimistic.
Step one is being honest with yourself about your capacity. I think that the struggle that most of us have is the Dunning-Kruger effect. We have this sense that we have greater capacity. We are more organized. We're more responsible. We're more all these things than we actually are.
I have a thing where I assume that if this much work needs doing, my capacity is the same as the requirement. If this much work needs doing in this amount of time, then I am going to be able to do this amount of work in this amount of time. That doesn't follow at all.
It's incorrect. It's based on a lot of assumptions.
So here's a list of reasons for self-sabotage, and this definitely crosses over. Fear of success. What does it mean to have fear of success? Everybody wants to be successful, says they want to be successful, but success requires change. Change is stressful. Sometimes your family can discourage you from success because they don't want to feel outshone. Sometimes your partner can discourage you from being successful. It's complicated being a person, and it's complicated negotiating what you want versus what everybody else wants out of you.
Something that I've really had to address in my neuro-emotional technique training, a lot of times we have our logical thinking brain that wants things for us and believes certain things, but then we have an emotional brain that has a totally different belief system. We talked about this on the manifestation thing. If I don't resonate with an idea, it doesn't matter what I believe about it. I'm not going to be able to get it together to make it happen. If I said I am a Michael Phelps level swimmer, and then I get out and get on that pool, there's a lot of limitations. First of all, physically, I have very short arms and a short body. But besides those,
a natural swimmer.
Besides those small limitations, I don't believe that I have his capacity. And maybe if I did a lot of therapy and worked on it for a while, I could get better. I have an inherent belief about something, and it's going to be really tough for me to overcome that.
What if you did intensive directed therapy for 30 years? At the end of the 30 years, you emerged almost 80 years old and said, I can beat Michael Phelps.
Maybe he's dead by then.
Right? Oh, yeah.
In which case I could.
You can 100% beat a dead guy for sure.
Maybe he's suffered a terrible accident.
Oh, God. Your own desire for success is going to be at odds with your negative self-talk, your inability to regulate your own emotions, and your core beliefs about yourself and about other people. If you truly believe, because of your upbringing, because of your siblings, people in your personal relationships, if you truly believe I'm a piece of crap, I can't do anything, guess what? You're going to behave in a way that supports those beliefs.
I say that a lot with my weight loss clients. They'll come in and just talking mad smack about themselves. It's terrible. The things that they say, I'm lazy, I'm stupid, oh, I should know better, blah, blah, blah. And I always ask them, okay, so when you think about anything you've ever accomplished in life, did you get there by going, wow, I am such a dumb piece of crap? Does that motivate you at all? Did that even work? If you want to do that, that's fine, but it won't get you anywhere.
Specifically on weight loss, people who justify bullying or shaming other people because of their bodies, because I want them to do better. Hey, guess what? That doesn't work.
Did you get to where you were by people telling you that you were a worthless piece of crap? Probably not.
Underlying reasons for self-sabotage, ADHD, neurodivergence, anxiety, but also low self-esteem, fear of failure. And that's something that I see a lot.
Trauma history. I used to have a client who every time she would have a big success, her abuser would assault her.
Wow.
She had this kind of built-in model.
You only have to have this experience a couple times for it to get hardwired and like, oh, every time that I do something good, it's going to result in very real pain for me.
So she had all of these big aspirations, and every time she would get close, she would do something to make it not happen because she would start becoming very anxious because her body would go back to her history.
Then you have a sour grapes tendency. Once they haven't achieved the thing, they will downplay it. Well, I didn't really want it anyway. That's for posers, or that's for nerds, or that's not for me. That thing that I thought I wanted isn't for me, and I'm glad I didn't get it.
Because it's making it okay with yourself.
You have to protect whatever ego you have left. Let's talk about self-sabotage in relationships. If you tell yourself, I can't have a good relationship, I've never had a good relationship, I'm never going to have a good relationship, you can make that true by doing the following: picking fights. I see this pattern a lot. Things are going really well, and then the avoidant person picks a fight or does something for it to not go well, or just breaks up.
I remember in the past, I was in a relationship and we were having a Valentine's weekend. It was great. We got a hotel room. We were doing all kinds of fun stuff, and he ruined it. And the next week we go to therapy, and she said, yeah, his lizard brain got really activated because things felt too safe. And so he had to make the other shoe drop.
There's a perverse thing where you don't want to be disappointed, so you will ruin it because then you have control.
The human mind is always trying to make sense of things and make the patterns consistent. If I were a child who grew up with a really abusive father, and every time we had a family vacation, my father destroyed it, it's going to feel weird if I go on a trip with my partner and everything's going well.
That doesn't follow into the pattern that you're used to. Even if change is good, it's painful.
Humans want the same things over and over again. This brain is not built for good times. This brain is built for safety and survival.
Cheating or breaking up for no reason. Absolutely have done this because I'm bored. I better just burn it.
That's moving into the imago stuff, right? It's boring because I'm not feeling triggered and activated all the time. So I have to destroy it.
Setting unrealistic expectations. We've talked about this before. This person is going to be my everything, my best friend, and my confidant, and my daddy.
What about my zaddy?
Having impossible standards for a partner, that means no one's ever going to meet them. And then you don't have to try and have a good relationship.
When it doesn't work out, it's also not my fault.
Right. I know a lady who in her 20s and 30s, she would go through a bunch of short-term relationships. And she was like, well, I'm not going to apologize for being choosy. I want what I want. Everybody's like, yeah. And then when she got 45, she was like, well, I just want someone who's just as good as my daddy. No one can measure up. And she was always on the hunt. She was always looking for this unicorn person that was going to meet all of her needs and expectations. She just doesn't want to be in a relationship. And that's okay too.
She doesn't want to be challenged. She doesn't want to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I think she wants to be in a relationship. She doesn't want to be hurt by the relationship. Well, I remember a client that I had in the past. She had, in her opinion, a perfect dad. I just want my partner to be more like him. But why would he be like him? They're two completely different people. And I said, P.S., it's also a lot easier to be a really good dad than it is to be a really good husband. I'm just going to say that. Because when you're someone's kid, the stakes are a lot higher. When someone is my peer and someone is my spouse, I don't think that I'm going to have to try as hard as I would with a child. It's a lot easier to be a great parent than it is to be a great spouse.
I saw a TikTok about the film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is an amazing movie about what we're drawn to versus what's actually good for us. They said about the movie, a relationship is only as strong as the least healed partner. I think there's a lot of people walking around looking for this perfect person that is going to be ideal for a relationship with them, but they are themselves so traumatized and fearful and maybe self-destructive. There's not that. They're the person who needs to heal instead of looking for the person that's going to be good enough to heal them.
Healing has to be an inside job. It's not something that anyone else can do for me.
Refusing to set boundaries can lead to some really unfulfilling, one-sided, resentment-filled relationships. Self-isolation, withdrawing from social connections and support systems, just to continue with your fear of rejection or your belief that you don't deserve closeness. That's a great way to stay out of healthy relationships.
It's also a good way to shoot any decent relationship in the foot.
Yeah, just pull back. A really weird example of self-sabotage that I have done was, for a while, I was training for a marathon. And I tried to go really slow because there's a category for runners who are over a certain weight that you fill out on the form when you put in for a race. And that is called Clydesdale. I have always been a Clydesdale runner. I want to thank all the little teeny tiny runners out there for taking time out of their lives to think of a name to hurt me. I took a long time to run the marathon. I'm not a natural runner. But there was this one time I was running on the treadmill and I believe I tripped myself so I could hurt my knee and not do it. I remember having a moment where I'm like, uh-oh, I'm falling. I think I did it on purpose because I didn't want to do the run. And that worked. But it was only looking back that I was literally self-sabotaging to not do something I was afraid of doing. The end of the story is eventually I did run a marathon.
You can only trip yourself on the treadmill so many times.
Right. My partner at the time joined me at mile 20 and commented, wow, I'm walking as fast as you're running, which was very great.
What a fun person.
And when I ran a half marathon, I told him when I thought I'd be finished and maybe meet me at the finish line. And he wasn't there. And I waited around and I said, hey, how come you weren't there? And he said, oh, I didn't think you were going to finish then.
I wonder why that relationship didn't work.
I'm still not sure. Fun examples of self-sabotage I've seen in other people. I had a comedy friend. He was the funniest guy in Portland. Everybody said, this is the person who's going to make it. But he was also super undependable and he would sometimes show up and sometimes wouldn't. And I think he was working from a John Belushi model of the beautiful mess, the chaotic genius. Unfortunately, that model doesn't work anymore because there's just too many sober, hardworking, funny people around. A thing he did repeatedly is he would pick a fight with his partner before big opportunities. There was a festival in Seattle. I was excited to do it, big visibility. He showed up late and wound up and furious because his girlfriend told me later he had picked a big fight with her about a video game. But that was a way that he kept himself safe from any achievements because he would just go ahead and screw it up. And then he could blame her, which is great.
He sounds like a really healthy, great guy. I remember I was teetering on the edge of a B for this class. And I feel like looking back, maybe my boyfriend did this on purpose. He picked a huge fight with me right before I went in for my final and I tanked it.
That's not self-sabotage. That's somebody sabotaging
It's
you.
just straight up regular sabotage.
Just traditional sabotage.
I have found a lot of times people will use cheating as a way to sabotage the relationship. I had this client in the past who has never had a healthy relationship. She had been in a long, long, long relationship that was incredibly unhealthy. And post-divorce had finally found a somewhat decent guy. He actually seemed like a really nice guy. Every time we met, she would say, I'm so terrified. I'm so terrified. He's too perfect. There's something wrong. There has to be something. But I think it's that thing of probably low self-esteem, her trauma history with her family, her husband was a piece of crap. I think it's just scary to think maybe things could work out. I think that's kind of a terrifying feeling a lot of times in relationships.
Maybe things could work out, and think about what else comes with that. I'm going to have to live up to something. I'm going to have to hold up my end of the bargain.
I'm going to have to be a better person.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
The great thing about cheating is you can destroy a good relationship with it, and you can also destroy a bad relationship with it that you just want to get out of.
It works on lots of different levels. It's the
like-
ultimate solution.
It's the most useful tool in your kitchen. You can use it for everything.
It's like the Ginsu knife of destroying relationships.
Yes. I feel like I want someone else to pay attention to me. I'm going to cheat on him. It's good. When you talk about healthy relationships, if you've only had unhealthy relationships, there is nothing scarier than a good one.
Because it feels fake. I remember that's what she always said. It feels fake. It feels like he's pretending and the mask is going to fall.
And then I'm going to get twice as hurt.
Right. And then I'm going to feel stupid because I've been falling for this fake thing that's been going on.
Other kinds of self-sabotage. This is just general self-sabotage. Abusing drugs and alcohol. Great way to do it. If you're feeling worried about a job, get drunk and show up. I used to date someone who was a very talented video editor. He was in this pattern where he would be unemployed and miserable. He would get a job. He'd be super excited for a little while. But when things started going wrong, he would compound that by getting drunk at work, taking a super long time to finish things, having them be finished really badly. Then he would get fired and he would go, well, it's because they hated me. And so that it was on to the next job. And we were only dating 9 months. And I saw this pattern a couple times.
He's doing this like it's his job.
Right. Anything that you're worried about going too well, you can absolutely ruin it with drugs and alcohol. And that's a more complicated topic. That's a way of self-sabotage.
There's sort of a dovetail, right? A lot of addicts struggle with self-esteem, struggle with trauma histories. They're going to self-sabotage a lot.
The smart person's self-sabotage is rumination and overthinking, worried about doubts and things that could happen instead of taking productive action, moving a lot, constantly uprooting, constantly changing jobs, changing cities. When you talk to the person about why they're doing this, they say, oh, because this is a better opportunity for me. There's a better job here. I just think this is going to be a better environment for me. It's a great way not to make any progress, to constantly move. People I've known have done this. It just feels like they're looking for something external to solve their problems because that's easier than admitting that you have to do some things yourself.
I remember I knew somebody who moved across the country and their thinking was new location, new life.
But they brought themselves.
Exactly. And then they realized they were the same miserable person in the middle of paradise. And it didn't matter where they were living because they were still them. They didn't want to do any personal work. I think it's a lot easier to pretend that these are external things. I remember I used to know somebody who every boss that they had was just the worst boss that you could ever have. And no matter what place they were working, no matter what location they were in, they had the exact same boss. And I just thought, what are the odds that 15 bosses have the same exact problem?
I think a big part of self-sabotage is this repeated theme. When you move a lot, you always have an excuse. I just moved here. I don't really have a lot of friends. I was talking with someone about a person they had just met. She said, I was surprised that she had been here for a while and knew these people for a couple of years because she acted like she just gotten here. She always acts like that because then no one asks, why don't you have any good friends?
Why don't you have any kind of social network?
Right. General self-sabotage, neglecting self-care, not prioritizing sleep, healthy eating, exercise. You can really destroy your body if you want. Avoiding discomfort, staying in familiar situations that are bad because they are familiar. Not taking responsibility, blaming external factors for your problems instead of acknowledging your own role in creating them. I think most of us have either known someone who's done these things or have recognized themselves in these lists. Now we get to my favorite part, how to help yourself. How to disengage from self-sabotage. The first one is recognize the pattern. Become aware. This is happening to me all the time. What are the odds that every boss I have is the worst boss who personally takes it out on me?
What are the odds that every boyfriend I have ends up kicking me out and leaving me homeless?
it's crazy bad luck, right?
Can you imagine? You just move from one relationship to the next, but in every relationship, you end up getting
Always ends up the same.
kicked out and sleeping in your car.
After you've recognized the patterns, you need to challenge that. Challenge your impulses to take you back into this pattern. Challenge your negative self-talk. Try to replace your negative self-talk with more positive affirmations. Practice a little self-compassion. Let yourself off the hook and recognize that people make mistakes and you've been trying to solve the same problem with the same solution over and over again, but maybe you can move forward. And this has helped me set realistic goals. Don't say, I'm going to be a top 10 artist next month, because then you're going to fail. And you can say, nothing ever works. I always fail. Try to break down large goals into smaller steps, reducing your feelings of overwhelm and increasing the likelihood of success. And one that I really believe in is redefine what success is. What does success mean to you? Does success have to be top line on a movie poster? What is the thing that is going to be fulfilling to you?
What are you seeking?
What is my motivation for this thing? How will I know that I've gotten it? How am I going to feel when I've gotten to this thing? And if you think that any external success is going to change your self-image and the way you feel inside, I can tell you right now that you are wrong. Laura, what are your final thoughts on this very interesting topic of self-sabotage?
If I were sitting in front of a client right now, talking to them about self-sabotage, I would also talk about their trauma history. I would talk about their life experiences. I would talk about their brain function. A book that really helped me to stop doing this is a book called Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. I'm going to read you a quote from that. It's a Mark Twain quote. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks, and then starting on the first one.
Mark Twain was super smart, it turns out. No one has ever achieved something without starting it. No one has ever achieved something without getting to the middle of it. And no one has achieved anything without ending it.
I remember I used to work for an extremely ADHD gentleman, and he and I would listen to that book on CD in the office all day long.
Wow.
And there have been some things that I learned from that book that I still use to this day. But I think the biggest thing for me is what I'm trying to overcome is the way my brain functions. My brain is not a completing tasks machine. It is a concept generator. It is a fart around and watch 800 episodes of Downton Abbey creator, but it's not a getting things done thing. I had to develop systems to get things done. One of the things that David Allen taught me that I still use, if you're thinking about something, so let's say that I want to become, you said, a top 10 musical artist. That's my goal. So what is step one in getting there? I would say step one is probably getting myself into some singing lessons, because in order to be a top 10 musician, I probably need to have some chops. And I probably also need to either learn to play an instrument or get better at my instrument. Step one would be get on the internet and see if I can find an affordable singing lesson in my area that I could try. Because I think the mistake that we make is we look at the end. I want to lose 100 pounds. Okay, I can cut both my legs off and achieve that tonight. If I want to really figure that out, it's going to be a slow, consistent process of doing things. So I think it's taking yourself from the end and focusing on the little micro steps that get you to that end. I think there's also a book called Nudge that talks about that too.
Taking small steps in the direction of the thing.
Moving myself in that direction. So that's part one. I think part two is if I'm finding myself in unhealthy patterns with my work or with my friendships or with my romantic partnerships, then I need to go to therapy and figure out what I'm doing here. And probably I need to do some trauma work.
It's just like a therapist to always say, you need to go to therapy. You know, if Laura was a car salesman, every week she would say, you need to buy a car.
If we had a podcast about cars, I probably would do that. Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this very interesting topic that you've brought to the fore?
I think this is a really relatable topic. And I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with. In general, I want to say, if you feel like the pressure of success is too much, remember that it's not your job to be super successful, that you don't need to be the top of your anything to give and deserve love. You don't need to be the best at anything to secure your place on the planet. You can just do okay. And that is okay. I know that's an un-American traitorous to suggest that you don't have to be the president of Exxon Valdez.
Why would I want to be the president of that ship that
That'd be bad.
polluted the ocean and killed a bunch of animals? I think being good enough is good enough. That's what I'm always striving for.
But if you're listening to these examples and thinking, like, I do a little bit of that, maybe step back and examine why that is. And if there's other better ways to manage your emotions and manage your fears that you could engage in, and go to therapy and buy a car. If you buy a car, it'll solve most of these things.
And if you buy a car, you're just going to have a car note.
New car. Laura, where can people find you on the internet if they want to hear more of your opinions and wisdom?
I think everyone wants to hear my opinions. If they want to see me in a professional environment and they live in the state of Texas, they can go to lauraryan.org and book an appointment with me. If they're interested in my TikTok account, which at this point is pretty stellar, they can find me at I am Laura Ryan on TikTok. If they want to follow the podcast, they can go to our website, mysistersatherapist.com, or they can find us on our Instagram page, My Sisters a Therapist Instagram. Virginia, if people want to find out more about your comedy career, how would they go about doing that?
If you live in Oregon or Washington and you're interested in seeing me perform, you can find a complete calendar of all my dates at www.badinia.com, badinia.com.
What if I'm Canadian?
You're going to have to travel one state down to see me, Canada. You're going to have to cross the border. You're going to have to talk to those Mounties. You're going to have to give them a bunch of toonies.
You're going to have to give them a lot of maple syrup.
I don't know if insults is the way to increase our Canadian listenership, but
I thought that every Canadian walked around with a bottle of maple syrup in their back pocket. That was just known.
Do you hear the joke about the Canadian who was walking home from the Pancake's house and he had a glass bottle of syrup in his back pocket and he slips and he falls down the stairs and he stands up and he feels like a warm trickle on his back leg and he says, "Oh God, I hope it's blood." That's really a joke about an Irishman and a bottle of whiskey.
I was going to say,
oh God, let it be blood.
Because I can't spill my whiskey?
Because I don't want to lose my maple syrup.
I'm an alcoholic?
Because I'm a maple syrupaholic. Laura, you can find me at badinia.com. You can find me at my TikTok, which is Badinia. And you can find me at my Instagram, which is Badinia. If you have a topic, a compliment, or just a random thing you want to tell us, you can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you want to hire us for a public event, public speaking, public dancing, if you want to hire us to open your hair salon or your donkey parade, you can write us at hireuss@mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, now is the time where sometimes you'll read a positive review. We love positive reviews.
We don't love negative reviews.
No, if you're thinking about writing us a negative review, just do something else. Go watch all the episodes of Downton Abbey. But if you would like to write us a positive review, we would love to see it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon. Laura, do you have a review to share with us this week?
I certainly do. This is an Apple Podcast review. The title is Amazing and Informative. I listen to MSAT at the gym and it makes my workouts go by quick. Lego My Imago and Attached have really helped me to better understand my relationships. It's really interesting to hear women's perspectives, and this pod has given me so much to think about. Thanks. Thanks, Pod Nerd 78.
Thanks, Pod Nerd 78. And I will say that this episode, we didn't mention our dad, and we didn't bash on men that much.
I was going to say, you did a little. Pod Nerd 78 is part of our male listenership.
Thanks, men. And
oh, by the way, if you know any men or women or non-binary folks, tell 5 of them right now about this podcast.
Stand up wherever you are right now, tear your headphones off and say, if you don't listen to My Sister's a Therapist, you should. It's a podcast.
You should give up on living if you don't listen to Sisters of Therapist.
As we think about giving up on living, let's also think about our spiritual founder, Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn. And his words, we can make it, baby.
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You do it to yourself, you do.